If you've ever stood in the aisle staring at a line of Mig welders and felt that knot in your stomach, what if I spend all this cash and it just doesn't work for my garage? You're not alone. Most hobbyists and small shop owners reach that point where the fear of buying the wrong machine outweighs the excitement of finally getting started. I'm going to walk through the Forney 327242 dual Mig welder, talk about the situations where it actually shines, and point out the moments when you might want to keep looking. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's set the scene. Imagine you're a DIY enthusiast who mainly builds garden furniture, does occasional auto body repair, and maybe likes to dabble in art projects that need a little metal work. You probably have a modest 240-volt outlet in the garage, but you don't have the space or budget for a full-size industrial machine. In that world, a 15-foot power cord is a surprisingly important detail. It means you can plug the welder into a standard outlet and still reach the far corner of a 12 by 20-foot shop without tripping over extension cords. That alone removes a whole class of headaches for people who don't have a dedicated welding circuit. The 327242's biggest claim to fame is its dual capability. It comes with a dedicated spool gun connector, which is a real convenience if you ever need to weld thinner aluminum. The spool gun lets you feed a softer aluminum wire without the usual burnback problems that show up on a standard MIG gun when you push your amperage too high. I've seen a lot of entry-level welders that ship with a single connector, forcing you to swap adapters and lose time when you switch material. Here, the two Euro-style connectors are permanently built in, so you can keep the spool gun mounted and just flip a switch when you need it. For anyone who plans to move between steel and aluminum on a regular basis, think of a hobbyist fabricator who builds custom bike frames or a small auto body shop that does occasional rust repair. That convenience translates directly into less downtime. Now, the next practical feature is the upgraded cast aluminum wire drive system. In plain English, this is the part that pulls the welding wire from the spool and pushes it through the gun. The cast aluminum reduces weight while still handling the forces involved in high-speed feeding. In real use, that means you'll notice smoother wire feed when you're running at 30 inches per minute or when you crank up to 250 amps for a thick steel plate. The dual-geared idler and drive roll further smooth things out, preventing the dreaded jamming that can happen when the wire gets tangled on a cheap plastic system. If you've ever tried to finish a joint and the wire stopped feeding mid-stroke, you know how frustrating that can be. The 327242's design keeps the feed consistent, which is especially useful when you're welding a long seam on a fence or a large metal tabletop. A couple of practical strengths that often go overlooked in the spec sheets are the integrated wheels and the fold-down door. The wheels let you roll the welder from one side of the shop to the other, and the heavy-duty casters lock in place when you're ready to fire. That mobility is more than just a convenience, it's a safety factor. You can position the welder close to the workpiece, keep the power cord short, and avoid the tripping hazard that a stationary unit with a long cord can create. The folding door opens up the interior so you can see the internal components without having to disassemble anything. If you ever need to do a quick clean-out of dust or debris, you can just flip the door and wipe it down without removing the entire unit from the floor. So, who should buy the Forney 327242? If you are a serious hobbyist who needs a versatile machine that can handle both steel and occasional aluminum, and you have a 240-volt outlet, this welder is a solid match. It works well for building garden structures, fabricating custom metal art, repairing thin-gauge automotive panels, and even small-scale fabrication projects that require a bit more power than the typical 110-volt home MIG. The dual spool capability means you won't be forced into a separate welder for aluminum, which saves both money and space. On the flip side, if you're a professional welder who needs to run 24/7 on high-amperage jobs, or you're looking for advanced pulse modulation features for thin-sheet welding, you'll probably find this unit a bit limited. The 327242 caps out at around 240 amps, which is plenty for most light to medium tasks but might fall short if you're cutting into thick structural steel on a regular basis. Also, if your shop only has one 10-volt service and you're not willing or able to upgrade the wiring, this model simply won't run without a dedicated 240-volt circuit. Now, let's address the hidden trade-offs. The welder's portability and size mean it's not as heavy as a full-size TIG unit. That can be a blessing.